Well, hello and welcome to another Dr. Childress Answers Your Questions. Now, today I'm going to be answering a question from a parent regarding how much or what age um, the targeted parent should explain or educate the child about the pathology in the family. The pathology relative to the other parent to compensate and work with that parent or the just the overall general situation in the family. And the answer to that question is you shouldn't. Okay, that's not your role, and that's not going to be very effective. It's answering questions and describing the problem to the child is the job of the treating family therapist, not you. The targeted parent is being invalidated as a reliable resource for the child. And so the child is caught in the middle. And if you start to try to educate the child, that's just going to put the child in the middle and kind of rip the child apart. That's the job of the therapist to handle that in a tactful, developmentally appropriate way relative to the overall situation. Now, the problem is you don't have competent mental health professionals working with your family. So they're not doing that. And that's a problem when you have a delusional thought disorder. We need to rebalance the child out to actual reality. And that's not occurring because you have incompetent mental health professionals. So, in the current situation, I can understand the question and I'll give you some degree of an answer relative to what do you tell the child or how do you educate the child regarding the nature of the problem in the family. The first thing to understand about communication is there's two aspects of it. There's language, which is up in the cognitive systems, the thinking systems, and uses words like I'm using now. And then there's communication, which has to do with emotional signaling and what are called relational moves. So as I talk, you'll hear the voice qualities will communicate emotions, the pauses, the silences, and just the gestures, the overall communication of an underlying emotion or an underlying meaning through relational moves that then carries the words that I say. And so it's a language and communication. The language of the thinking system and the communication is the emotional system. You can see, facial expressions and gestures and timing of what we say. You do not want to come to the child through the thinking system. The children's thinking system isn't very well developed, and that's not the substance of communication. Communication is going to come through the emotional signaling and through the relational moves. And so that's where you want to work. That's why your therapist should be doing it, because the therapist should be capable in the communication systems and then layer in the language necessary for the child. So for you, you want to not use the language and communication cognitive words, and so do not try to educate the child regarding the pathology or the other parent. What you will do is you will communicate to the child what the pathology is and what's going on in the family, but you'll do it without words. You'll do it with sort of reality. And so let me explain something about people, relationships. Our brains are designed to synchronize with each other. There are a variety of things, mirror neurons, but other things are just designed to synchronize with one another. And what we've discovered about that synchrony process is we don't actually want synchrony. We want breach and repair, it's called. We want little breaches, little dysynchronies that are then fixed. And you can see in this diagram of two sine waves representing the two people, if let's say we're the blue blue line and the child's a red line that's going through, and that's their emotions and psychological state kind of moving through the time. We actually don't want to be absolutely synchronized with the child. That's a bad thing. Whereas if there's a lot of mismatches and a lot of breaches and then we fix it again, that's actually what we want. We want that bottom diagram. And that's because if we are totally perfectly synchronized with the child, then if there is a mismatch, when there is an empathic failure, and that's what causes the breaches, when there is a breach, the two systems fly off in different directions and we have no ability to repair the relationship because they're so fragile. Whereas if we've had a lot of experiences of minor mismatches and breaches and repair, then if the relationship goes off when it has a empathic failure, they can get back on again because they've developed the neural networks for that breach and repair sequence. And what we're talking here is developing the neural networks in our brain for synchrony, for affect regulation, emotional regulation, social regulation. And so we want breaches and repair. That's a healthy thing. And that's what Edtronic, with all his still face, has shown. That when he looks, Edtronic looks at the still face and looks at this synchrony pattern and dysynchrony, what they found is that the parent and child are out of sync. They're mismatched 70% of the time in healthy relationships. Healthy relationships are dysynchronous, mismatched 70% of the time. That's a good thing. The problem is a failure to repair. So we always want to repair that relationship. Now, here's what Tronic says about that breach and repair. Unlike many other accounts of relational processes, which see interactive misses, mismatches, misattunements, dysynchronies, miscommunications, as indicating something wrong in the interaction, these misses are the interactive and affective stuff from which co-creative reparations generate new ways of being together. Instead, there are only relationships that are inherently sloppy, messy, and ragged, and individuals in relationships that are better able or less able to co-create new ways of sloppily being together. Sloppy is a good thing in relationships. We just want to repair them. We do a dance, a relationship dance of repair. And so any mental health professional working in the family courts, all mental health professionals working with attachment pathology in the family courts, must understand the breach and repair sequence and what that does for the healthy development of the brain. Because this situation in the family courts where there's a breach and no repair is the worst possible thing that could happen. Okay, that is, Edtronic calls it the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is this breach and repair stuff. The bad is when there's a big breach. The ugly is leaving it unrepaired. Okay, that's the worst possible thing we can do. And that's exactly what's happening in the family court. So your mental health people are extremely incompetent, extremely uneducated, and that's a serious problem for you that you're trying to compensate for. So what do you do in this current situation? Well, in terms of synchrony and dysynchrony, one of the things to understand about communication, emotional communication, is that when we're attuned with the child, and so when we're in sync with the child, that amplifies the child's inner experience. So and then when we're on opposite and we're misattuned to the child, then that's going to dampen the child's inner experience. And so, for example, the way the pathological parent produces pathology in the child is not by bad-mouthing the other parent. It's through the emotional signaling, the relational moves, the communication to the child. So the child will come home from a visit with a targeted parent, and the allied parent will say, "How were things with your mom?" And the kid will say, "Fine, everything is great." And the parent will go, "Really?" Now that really questioning says that wasn't the right answer. And so we got a little missynchrony. The child says, "Things were great with my mom." The attuned response would be, "Oh, great. I'm glad to hear that." But this parent goes dark, and maybe they look away, maybe they get a little bit of a dark mood. All of that communicates to the child that was the wrong answer to give. Then when they say, "Really? You had a fun time?" The child picks up the communication that that's the wrong answer, and they say, "Well, it was kind of boring." That's the correct answer. Now the allied parent will attune to the child and go, "Oh my goodness, you poor thing. They never have anything prepared for you. They're just so insensitive to your needs," and they amplify that experience of the child that there was a problem, rather than amplifying the experience that there was no problem. And so it just through continually doing that, they give the child a very clear message about what the proper answer is. And then they get all sorts of affective emotional rewards and relationship rewards, affection, and various things for giving the proper answer. Now, what you'll want to do as the targeted parent is this child is coming to you with a false reality. It's a delusion, a persecutory delusion. They're coming with this false reality created by this process by the allied parent. So you want to rebalance them to what actual reality is, which means you need to stay in actual reality. Your child is a good child. You know who they are. You know their authenticity. And when they come to you as this little aberrant child with mean and nasty or afraid of you or all this stuff that's really odd, if you believe that's true, if you respond as if that's true, then you're communicating to the child that that's an actual reality. And that's going to amplify that experience. You're caught in the false reality. So the first thing you have to do is don't go to the false reality and stay anchored in actual reality. That's going to put you on a misattuned response to the child. The child says, "I hate you." You have to go, "Really? What's going on?" You respond in a way that's not synchronous to that. And smiling in that kind of happy emotion zone, that emotion. The happy emotion communicates there's no danger, there's no threat, there's no predator in the world. And so if the child says, "I don't ever want to see you again," and you go, "Really?" And you come with a positive emotion, a surprise, that communicates to the child, "That's the silliest thing I ever heard." And so you're communicating that reality is not actual, without having to use the words of that. It's just a very simple, "Wow, that's a really odd thing." And that has to do with forming your intention. What's your intention in responding to the child? And we'll talk about that in a second. So that's what you want to be thinking about as you're interacting with your child. When your child is in actual zones of reality and providing appropriate responses and things, those are the times you want to attune to the child's response. The times that they're giving you nonsense, you want to misattune to those responses. Now, you shouldn't have to do that. You're the parent. You should have a therapist who's doing that. However, you don't have a therapist, so I'm educating you about what the therapist should be doing, so maybe you can do it as well. Don't use words. Don't challenge the other parent. Don't try to explain to the child what the problem is with the other parent. Just respond from your anchor in reality. Now, let me also explain what attunement and misattunement are. They come out of early childhood, and the best way to see that is in infants. And so if you have a child who's crying, an infant who's crying, and the parent comes over, the child's hungry, the child's crying, the parent comes over and feeds the child, That's an attuned response. Child has a poopy diaper, parent comes over, changes a diaper, that's an attuned response. If the child's hungry and the parent changes the diaper, that's a misattuned response. Or if the child has a messy diaper and the parent feeds the child, that's a misattuned response. So it's not the response that's attuned, or it's the connection between the two of them, that they support each other. So if the child comes back from the targeted parent with the allied parent and says, "Oh, I had an awful time," that parent then provides nurture for the child. And that nurture for the child's complaints is an attuned response to the child's making complaints. If the parent would say, "Oh no, yeah, everything's fine. Your mom's great, and she loves you very much," that would be a misattuned response. It's going to dampen the child's complaint or expand it based on the response the child's getting from the other parent. So the most important thing in organizing our response to the child is not what we do, it's our intent. What's our goal with the child? And the brain is designed to read the intention of the other person. So again, the therapist organizes their intention, and then all the responses are consistent with that intent. And the child reads that and reads what the meaning of the situation is. Now, there's 4 intentions. 2 of those are maturation building. That's an intent to task and intent to change. Intent to task is like homework. I don't care what you think or feel. You need to sit down and do your homework. Intent to change is, I don't like what you're doing. You need to be different. Now, both of those intentions are not bad. They're just maturation building. What they do is put constraints on the child, that the child then has either social constraints for intent to change, or task constraints like homework, or things that they have to contain their emotions, contain what they want and everything, so that they complete a task or they can interact appropriate socially. And in doing that, we build the brain networks for social regulation and cognitive regulation and being able, frustration tolerance, things like that. The other 2 intentions, though, are the ones you want to be using. You don't want to use intent to change, task or intent to change very much, because they will breach relationship. They basically communicate, I don't care what you think or feel. You need to be different somehow. And what we want in this particular situation is we want to build that relationship between the targeted parent and the child. So we want the targeted parent to remain in that in the relationship building intentions. And the 2 of those are the intent to be with and intent to understand. And so I'll talk about intent to be with other times and stuff. It's so simple, so wonderful. It's basically just showing the child that you kind of like hanging out with them and loving them and things. The one that you want to be relying on the most is the intent to understand. That's the one that you need to stay anchored in 70-80% of the time. You need to be over in an intent to understand. And it's a real simple. It's just, what's it like to be you? It's just a simple curiosity of coming to the child. So the child says, I hate you. I never want to be with you again. Instead of getting hurt and responding to that as if it's real, you go, whoa, that's an unusual response and out of the ordinary and kind of wild. And so you respond, but that communication that you're okay, you're happy, relative, emotional tone of background state of happy, is communicates there's no threat or no danger. And that's not an actual reality. And so you emotionally communicate that. And then from the intent to understand, you want to explore what that's about. And you go, what's going on with that? What's that feel like? What's that like? Okay, so you're really angry about this and you're angry about that. And you stay on it. For beat after beat after beat of exchanging, you just stay with an intent to understand. What's it like to be you? And I describe this as like the child is their internal experience is they know what they feel, they don't know why. And so they have this feeling, but it's a dark place inside. Just this feeling is there. And what the intent to understand is, it's called the eyes of the other. You're bringing the eyes of the other like a lantern, yeah, like a light into their dark area of inner experience. And with your eyes of the other, as you approach with an intent to understand, they'll join you and start to explain it, and they will begin to understand more about themselves and the situation. And you have a good kid. They're authentic. Their authenticity is still there. And if you believe that they are the angry, hostile, rejecting person that they're presenting, that's communicating that you actually believe that's who they are. No, they're not that way. You know that. So that's where you have to stay in reality more than they're staying in the false reality. And so it's kind of a battle of realities, but you don't take it through the thinking. You take it through your emotional system, which is where you need to be centered, stay centered. Don't get anxious about the situation. You know where things are moving. This pathology is designed, it has source code in it, to destabilize you as a targeted parent in every way possible. Challenges reality, challenges, the 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 child's relationship with you. This challenges you financially, puts you in the court system that's very unfamiliar. It's designed to destabilize you in every way possible. You need to stay stable, and stay in your reality, and then that'll help the child join you in your reality, um, in this situation. So, what's it like to be you? It's very simple. It gets crushed by an intent to change and intent to task. So don't go there. Um, just stay with an intent to understand and help the child sort of become self-aware of that issue. And one of the primary resources I recommend you read is Tronic and Gold, The Power of Discord. Repair is where the action is. So this is the book that you'll want to be reading relative to that. So with that, that's my answer to the question of what should you explain to the child about the nature of the pathology, the nature of the parent. Basically nothing, because that's just going to create conflict for the child, and you're coming in through the wrong system. You're coming in through thinking system, and we need to anchor, or we need to communicate more on the emotional relationship moves, which is your intention, which is you being in reality, and you're using the eyes of the other with an intent to understand rather than words and cognitions. And you want to stay away from anxiety as the emotion. Um, every emotion, there's four of them basically: angry, sad, afraid, and happy. And each one of those emotions has a lie associated with it. The lie of angry is, I don't care. Yes, you do. No, I don't care. Well, you will when you're not angry. Okay. That's the lie of angry. I don't care. Gets us into a lot of trouble. The lie of sadness is, it's always going to be this way. No, it's not. It's going to change. No, it's always going to be this. It's always going to be this way. That's the lie of sadness. The lie of anxiety is what you have to watch out for. And this is important. No, it's not. Relax. No, really, this is important. It's that fear. It's that anxiety. And so you want to counter that, and you drop a little happy chemical. You smile, and you change the anxiety to excitement. You're afraid and happy at the same time. That's excitement. And it softens and relaxes out. There's no worries. Everything's going to be okay. You're going to figure it out. And so we need to get you in the support and the mental health system to support you on this, because right now you've been abandoned on all of this. You're kind of having to navigate stuff that you shouldn't have to navigate on your own. But we'll get there. And when we do, that's where we're going to want you to be, is an intent to understand, to build that relationship. We want to keep you away from intent to task and intent to change. Stay away from discipline. The intent to understand and be with are guidance-based strategies. That's synchronizing with the child is guidance-based strategies. Eyes of the other. The other discipline-based strategies are taking toys away or putting them on timeouts or various discipline punishment things that make them suffer. You don't want to use those, not in this situation. So with that, I'm going to head off to my other tasks of the day, and good luck, everybody.